afternoon. 2 years ago, I was at a crossroads. I had worked in the nonprofit and public sectors in Canada and in Bermuda. I'd had a global experience culminating in the creation of a philanthropic institution of which I was quite proud. I had managed to combine a helping career, social work, with sustained social enterprise and philanthropy, with great rewards. My husband and I had raised our 2 children up and out into the next phases of their lives. But dropping off that last child at university, I began to think, is this it? Is this all? I'd followed all the rules. Go to school, get a good degree, get a good job, work hard, climb the ladder, raise your family. This is what success is supposed to look like, and your job is done. But being proximate to that generation that seems in constant pursuit of fulfillment made me wonder, is my job in fact done? Am I fulfilled? Is there another chapter for me? During the pandemic, I had started to write some stories about family, about friends, coming of age, memoir. And I was enjoying it, but that sensation of something else, there's something else out there for me, remained. My why, so to speak, and finding my passion, refining my purpose, was becoming my challenge. Not having a clear-cut purpose and a clear-cut path is a bad space for me, and I imagine it's a bad space for some of you as well. I'm a problem solver. I like to solve problems, so I was struggling, and I came through those struggles in the most unexpected, weird, and fantastical ways. In early 2022, I'm sitting at San Francisco International Airport. It's about 5:47 a.m. It's early, I am tired. So I sit down at my gate and I decide I'm going to listen to some short talks and some podcasts, which have been recommended for me based on my past listening and watching behavior. And I love these lists, normally these recommendations, they often work for me. But on this particular day, the most unusual of talks rose to the top of things I meant to prefer. A TEDx talk entitled, Why I Write About Elves. Based on the title alone, I swept that thing up and away. This is a preposterous recommendation for me, I thought. But that talk would not go away. It came back as a recommendation on my 2 email accounts, then on my Facebook little watch this video, and then on my YouTube, and I thought, okay, they've got me. I'll watch the talk. The speaker, a man named Terry Brooks, had what I suspect was an unintended message for me. Terry said something to the effect that he writes about elves because he feels compelled to write about elves, and that he imagines he'll be writing about elves until long into the future, for years into the future. And although he didn't say these exact words, my take was, this man can't imagine doing anything else. And what continued to resonate with me as I kept watching that talk again and again at this point was that your why, my why, has to involve doing something because you cannot imagine doing anything else. You feel compelled. And I left with 3 beliefs after watching that talk. Number 1, that I will never be called to write about elves. But number 2, memoir, and this writing of memoir was starting to gift me part of my why. It was giving me voice and healing and a way of communicating my experience that felt quite empowering. And last, that I could no longer imagine a life without some form of creative writing in it. I felt compelled to write. This man's talk was placed in front of me about a time that was perfect for me to get that message, but it couldn't have been further away from my essence. This talk was way out of my ordinary, and I almost missed it. And it made me wonder, what else do I miss because something seems too far outside of my ordinary? In the summer of 2022, I'm heading to Montreal, where I had lived for 14 years. And I'm meeting up with a friend who we're going to call Phoebe. On the face of it, Phoebe and I have very little in common. Phoebe is a Syrian Lebanese woman whose aura sells and works well with her profession, which is a hairstylist to film and other industries. Phoebe is social. She's adventuresome. She's like fun in a basket. She says things like, come on, why not? Let's go for it. Whereas I need to know everything about a situation before I get involved. I need to know everything. As long as she can recall, Phoebe says that she has been called to understand how the universe works and our role in improving the human condition. And on this we align. I care about the human condition, but the way that we would approach that caring are worlds apart. In addition to being a hairstylist with flair, Phoebe describes herself as a proper modern-day witch. She is not flying around on broomsticks, no. But what she means when she says witch is that she is aligned or seeks to be aligned with nature and intention-infused actions. Phoebe has studied Wicca. She has mastered the practices of tarot, Vedic astrology, palmistry, meditation, and Kabbalistic teachings. But by this time in 2022, when I'm coming to Montreal, her studies have taken her further afield to Native and Indigenous practices of reaching heightened conscious states. She has tried ayahuasca, psilocybins, and man-made hallucinogens, and she's begun to get an understanding of how these things relate to the psyche. So we're having a chat, and I'm on my way, and she said, hey, I would like to do something for you, Myra. I would like to journey you. And poor me, I thought, I love a trip. I love a trip. New York, San Francisco, let's get going. But she continues and she says, no, no, no. I have access to some mushrooms that would be just right for you, I think. And I am silent. I am silent. So she continues and she says, they're from the Blue Mountains, Myra. You'll be fine. Come on, why not? Let's go for it. And in my head, I said, here's why not. I would not go for it, Phoebe. I don't smoke. I don't do drugs. I am as square as can be. But out loud, I said, I would be terrified. I'd be scared to death. But as she talked more about the process and what I might get out of it, I became less frightened, less skeptical, and pretty much ready to take on the challenge. Why the change up in approach and character? Because everything I had been trying to resolve this question of my why had not been working. Research, study, logic, focus, none of it was working. I'd even taken some additional certifications that I thought might serve as my next late-stage career. Pickleball coach, diversity consultant. I successfully passed the real estate exam, and none of it fit. None of it was working. So I imagine that I was more open to this suggestion of a journey than at any other stage in my life. I did my research, of course I did. I watched Netflix. how to change your mind. I would later describe this journey as both mythical and transcendent. But for those of you who don't fancy the fantastical, I get it. I would simply say it was like having a deep conversation with one's self. I am not advocating the use of psilocybins. I'm not endorsing them. But I share this story because it shows how my thinking was starting to change. My mindset was starting to change. I was becoming a proponent of doing things a little differently, shaking things up, taking a cisgender, semi-spiritual black woman's equivalent to a midlife rumspringer. I believe I listen and hear people in a different and deeper way. I believe I am attuned to a sense that I can't name or explain. I'm starting to write with more focus and more clarity of intent. And I owe this focus and clarity of intent to having taken a journey with that witch. A week later, I'm in the plane and I'm thinking about the elves and I'm thinking about the journey, and all of a sudden I am bombarded with memories of my mother. A few months before she passed away, she said, "Myra, I have some stories to tell." And I'm not proud of this, but normally I would have blown her off until some time that might never have happened. I just would have said, "Oh, whatever." But on this particular day, I said, "Okay, Mom, I'd like to hear your stories and I'll record them." And boy, was I lucky, because she gifted me with her most powerful memories. That when she was 7 or 8 years old, she had witnessed a lynching in St. Petersburg, Florida, and she had kept that memory for 70 years, but somehow found a way to put it aside in pursuit of living a culturally rich life with racially diverse friendships. That she had lived in chronic physical pain her whole life, but she kept going on and wanted to keep going on because she wanted to have a good life, from which I took, you can live in chronic pain and with chronic illness and still find joy. That moving with her Bermudian husband from the United States to Canada, a place where she knew no one and nothing about it, she considered the greatest adventure of her life. She had few regrets, from which I took, it's important to take that leap of faith and risk into uncertainty, which may sound really cliche, right? Except when I married that with my journey to memoir writing, where I was learning to write memoir, you have to go deep into a place of vulnerability, which is risky, and that for most creative pursuits, the outcomes are uncertain. So writing memoir is a risk and a leap of faith into uncertainty. That's exactly what it is. Then my mother said one more thing to me, which struck me. She said, "Hey, I like what you're doing. I think you should keep writing, and you have to understand." My mother was a mild, quiet person. She moved around the world as if she didn't want to take up too much space. She was also exceedingly practical. So if she were to offer any advice, it would always be very practical. Things like, make sure your finances are in order. So for her to say, keep writing, I like what you're doing, that was the equivalent of somebody saying to you, find your joy. And I had never heard anything come out of that woman's mouth like that in my whole life. It was a real late stage change up. It was extraordinary that she should find her voice and gift those stories at exactly the time when I was open and ready to hear them. It was extraordinary. And then she died, and I was left to make sense of that. Why did she wait so long to tell these stories? Why wait? And this is how I've made sense of it. If you have a story to tell, if you have something to say, you should not wait. Don't wait. But when you do decide to tell your story, it may be the perfect time for somebody who needs to hear them. They will be open and ready to hear them. And that's part of the reason why I'm here today. I will leave you with this. If the way that you traditionally relate to the world, is not providing you with the answers that you seek, watch something out of character. It may not be a man who talks about elves, but it may be a story that is similarly off-piste for you and will resonate. Seek the company of that friend who is different from you and holds unusual spaces and perspectives. It may not be a witch, but you may have your own witch or witch-like equivalent. That person has been put in your path because the way that they see the world is different, and that different perspective may prove a lifeline for you. Listen out for signs and messages, perhaps from people who have had influence on your life and on your thinking. An offering may be made, and you want to be open and ready to hear it. I promise you, if nothing else, you will go on a world of adventures, unexpected, weird, fantastical, transcendent. And through these adventures, you may discover, like me, your purpose.